Prior to you coming on city council about 9 years ago, we had a long-term policy of unlimited time restriction.
Actually, when I came on to council, it was 2-hour limits.
Okay, right.
Yeah, let's
so
talk
we just
about what
ended,
I came on with, yeah.
Well, we just ended a long thing, and then...
I don't know.
And,
it was 2 hour.
Okay, so when you started, they had implemented a 2-hour parking restriction.
Right.
First just around the conference center, and then it expanded to the full parking district downtown. But then also at that time got rid of the employee enforcement.
Well, no, actually, I think the judge had a lot to do with that.
The judge?
Yeah. You guys are aware, the judge started throwing out those things because you were lacking photos. You had to prove the person was at work, had a picture of them at work. The evidentiary requirement on our parking guys became very complicated, so it became increasingly difficult to prove somebody was at work, that it wasn't their wife or their kid or their significant other that were parking, and made it almost unworkable to enforce. That's the problem.
Well, my experience, because I was running a downtown business at that point, was that they would, if they saw a car that they thought was an employee, they would go to the so they would walk in my coffee house.
Yeah.
And
try to catch
John
him.
was there right behind the bar.
And they get him. Yeah.
And they would give him a $200 or it was a $180 ticket or something.
Sure.
Also, all employers every 6 months were sent a letter from the city. They were required to put.
Do you want
all the
that
names
system?
of
Are you
employees.
AP? Just tell me. Or
No,
you want that
no.
system back?
The reason why I'm bringing up the
okay.
clarity of what that system was, because then we went to 2 hours, and then we had a parking task force that you chaired, but the mayor kind of appointed it, but you just
the
chaired.
mayor actually chaired it.
Right. It was. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Task force that came out with recommendations that included looking at meters downtown, and then there was I don't want to get these facts wrong.
Well,
just setting up the question.
I think you're kind of jumping on stuff. I think you're jumping ahead. I think meters were talked about. I think a whole range of options were being talked about. What was motivating it? And I know you guys are convinced that it was going to be meters, and that I have always found that kind of tickled me. Because there was never votes on the city council to do parking meters downtown. That was just an
that wasn't a recommendation of the task force?
That was an imaginary outcome, not a final. It was, how do we pay for a parking system that no longer can be supported by the existing parking tax? How do you do that? How do you look at a fair distribution of costs for this program that provides for enforcement, provides for maintenance of the parking structures, does all of the things we wanted to do? One way is meters. Are there other ways? And I happen to believe there are a whole variety of ways that you can do it. But I think the one that was seized upon by a small group of people downtown, including my opponent, was, oh my God, set their hair on fire, it's parking meters. That just wasn't the outcome. That was an imaginary outcome that never would have passed this muster. I knew there wasn't any appetite for meters downtown yet, but it's something worth talking about. Where are we on the continuum toward meters? We have a whole group of people that think automobiles, including apparently you, that automobiles are part of the problem, not part of the solution. And think automobiles ought to pay their fair share. And they think parking meters ought to have been downtown years ago, so automobiles pay their fair share of costs. So
isn't that simple?
I know it's not. It isn't that simple.
See, I know enough about these issues as having taught urban economics forever to not even be able to have a position.
Yeah, you can't. It's hard to get to a position of how do you. You almost can't make them pay.
The incidents. Yeah. It's convenience for shoppers, or is it occlusion from the business? I mean, the whole the cost benefit and incidence vectors are a nightmare.
Oh, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It is, and that's what I think we began to fully understand. Was this is very complicated. What you had was a group that decided you are headed down this road, we're going to do something about it.
Right, so let me correct my clarification that said that I just said the task force recommended meters. You're saying that was just one thing they said to look at. but then a small group, including your opponent, Carol Smith, thought that it was pushing meters, reacted to that by collecting signatures for a citizens initiative petition.
Right.
And basically going back to the model that we had before the 2 hour, back to the unrestricted all-day free parking.
That's right.
Model. That then went in front of you and council, where you had two choices: either to put it on the ballot or to adopt it, right?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And you chose to adopt it.
Yeah.
And you said at the time that 6,000 people signed this or whatever.
Whatever it was, this is substantial.
It was a large amount, and so that was
it deserved another attempt to see if it would work.
Okay, so then you and the majority council voted to implement it, to give it another try to see if it would work.
Well, that's what the public wanted.
And so you implemented the same non-time restriction, changed all the signs downtown, but didn't enforce the employee element, which
we enforced it as legally as we could, and they were still, I know, trying to deal with employees. We didn't have a clear policy on residents, and we had a lot more residents downtown than we'd had before.
Yeah, that's growing.
So it had some other factors in place that made it more difficult. It wasn't the same legal structure, and it had attendant problems, and it really became clear it wasn't going to work.
So I'm sorry for the long setup to get to my question.
Well, it lets you defend your position.
Well, it lets me. I have to be able to get to this point,
okay,
and it's about employee parking. To implement it, to see if it would work, but then not fully implement it, which the key part was this employee enforcement thing.
No.
Well,
apparently no one had checked. No one had checked on what the situation was on employee parking.
A possibility of implementing that, you're saying? No one checked on the
I don't think the people who did that petition understood the framework they were operating in, and were very, very disappointed that they didn't.
So the result was that we got the free unlimited parking part of it, but we didn't get the enforcement of the employee side of it.
I don't remember that you had an enforcement of an employee part of it, but it wasn't enforceable is part of the problem. I guess it's not clear to you that it was not legally enforceable, the employee part. That was the part of the problem.
Well, what I'm getting at is the intent to approve it rather than send it to voters.
What did the law say? What did the ordinance that was given to us say?
I understood it was going back to the policy prior to 2 hours.
Well, I think people hoped it would, but it wasn't. It didn't exist. This enforcement mechanism had been shown to be legally flawed relative to employees.
Okay.
And I don't think anyone bothered. I mean, I never heard from people about this petition, but I could have warned them. You got to come up with something relative to employees. I think we did say a couple of times that really concerned because we were going to see employees coming in from the mall. We have seen, this has changed a lot. And people, some of the folks that were involved in this don't know Salem very well. They know their neighborhood, okay, but they don't know Salem. We have a huge employee base, 16,000 people coming into that mall by car from somewhere else needing a place to park their car. If they knew anything about the Grant neighborhood, Northeast neighbors, Cessna, these neighborhoods around us, they would know one of the problems we've got is people will park about a mile away and walk to get free parking. There's 500 people just waiting in line for parking in the mall area that can't find parking there. And you created a magnet for them. They're not your coffee shop guy. That guy you might be able to find, but the guy working over in DHS in a cubicle somewhere, where's he? Where do you find that guy? See, that's the problem. I'm just saying, nobody dealt with the serious problem of the parking demand in this particular area, and what we got was a real problem.
Well, what we got was a test to improving it or approving the petition to see, in your words, whether it would work or not.
Oh yeah.
But implementing it without the employee restriction, which you've pointed out several times, wasn't possible or had complications.
It didn't have. No. It had the You didn't have an employee restriction. You thought you had one.
Okay.
It was a horrible mistake for the downtown business owners that the people who pushed this did not know what they were doing and did it wrong. Don't blame me for doing it wrong.
Well, I'm just saying that when you implemented it, and you just said to see whether it would work. Implemented it without the employee enforcement elements.
No, we enforced what we were handed by 6,000 people as a petition. Either you're serious about it or you're not. If you took it out and didn't warn people, not you, but you, took it out and didn't warn people, oh, by the way, the legal structure has changed over time and our ability to enforce employee parking, which was not the biggest problem you had, but you had a broader group of employees coming in than your downtown employees. We just didn't think this through completely, so maybe you shouldn't sign our petition until we get a better set of language. You can't blame someone else for that mistake. We're only handed one thing, that is, let it go to a vote or institute it. Well, why bother with a vote? You have 6,000 or 9,000 people. I mean, this was a real strong statement of we want this back. You got it. It just didn't work.
But you said you thought it was a flawed plan. So why would you?
It was a flawed plan.
But that was the choice.
Yeah, that was the choice.
So why wouldn't you send it to a vote and then
there's no choice. I'm not going to debate you over it. You had 6,000.
No, let the community debate with a vote.
What,
then
you're going to be against it?
Against
your own plan?
Well, it wasn't my plan. But
was Carol going to debate it? Look. You're just look. I'm not going to argue this. A flawed plan was instituted by Carol Smith and her friends. It failed. We resolved it with 3-hour parking. It's working really pretty well. There's no reason to talk about parking meters downtown. There's no debate over parking meters downtown. There may someday, when we hit a certain level of congestion in terms of parking, a reason to talk about parking meters. There may be. But right now, the
3-hour limitation is enforceable.
It's working. It's enforceable and it's working.
And that's going to cover the employee problem too.
Yeah, it's working right now, really pretty well. And we did exactly what we had planned to do in the recommendations. We changed out parking meters in other parts of town and are continuing our process of changing them out to modern parking. That's what's going on. That was the outcome. We could have probably gotten to the 3 hours without, I think, the painful exercise of this petition if people would have just stopped and talked to each other and calmed down just a little bit and not questioned the motives of everyone involved, that somehow there was some sort of venal motive or some motive to destroy downtown. I mean, I've never seen such incredible invective about what was going on with that parking committee trying to figure out how to solve a long-term problem of costs, benefits, meeting the needs of the shopping public, the business community downtown. Look, that's just the reality of it. Some people don't know how to talk, but we were talking about, mainly we were talking about fixing the meters in other parts, modernizing the meter system. But at the same time, because you're looking at, should we also look at meters, not meters, but these pay stations in downtown?
Like Portland.
Wrong, and I regret that the discussion, that it was ever mentioned, because you forget sometimes some people are so hypersensitive to the discussion for whatever reason. They're not even in the retail business, but they're so hypersensitive to even talk about it. Freaks them out. Just freaks them out. completely, and they go off the deep end, and that's what happened. We could have stopped for a moment, talked to each other, had a full understanding of what's going on down here, and arrived at 2 hours wasn't enough. That was part of the problem. We're getting hammered over 2 hours because people are getting tickets people can't get their hair done. Common uses downtown where they were having problems. We needed to extend to 3.
Between 2 and 3.
Yeah, there really is. And if we'd have had more time, but this went off. This is somebody pulled the trigger too quickly, and not somebody. Carol pulled it too quickly, and I think the outcome was the negative outcome. I think we found a good balance, and I'm not out there blaming Carol Smith for the mess that happened down here, and I don't expect to be blamed for it either. I think we have found a solution that's workable for right now, and will continue to work with each other. I think all of us are increasingly sensitive to be very cautious with parking. We ought to all be very, very careful. We don't talk about meters. I'm not. I've opposed meters the whole time I was in the council. I just wanted to talk about how do we do this stuff. We can't have some conversations here with some people in town. We just can't do it. We just can't talk about some stuff. I think that's too bad, but...
Well, that's kind of why I'm trying to get to this one point, which I haven't been able to ask, and it's the employee parking issue. I'm just saying that if you implemented that with to show that it isn't going to work, but then you don't include the employee enforcement restriction, that's why it didn't work. One of the main reasons why it didn't work.
No.
So then
the employee restriction continues in place. It's just unenforceable.
It's just a...
Well,
it's just unenforceable, dude.
Well,
well,
the judge doesn't buy it. She just doesn't buy it.
Well, the judge bought it plenty of times, but
actually not. Actually not. Not this judge.
Which judge are we talking about?
Jane doesn't like it. Yeah, she thinks we need to do a better... Well, we don't have enough personnel. We don't have enough money. Now, we could do meters and enforce it because we'd have more money.
Right.
I don't think we want to do that.
So I understand you saying that it wasn't possible to implement it because the judge wouldn't include it.
We did It's there. It's there.
It wasn't
impossible.
It wasn't enforceable. Thank you.
Okay.
But to implement it, and then to implement the free unlimited parking, and to not be able to enforce the employee aspect of it, which I'm correct so far, right?
Yes.
And but then to use that as a reason why that system doesn't work was disingenuous. No?
Okay. No, I don't buy it. No. I did not bring that petition.
Right.
Okay? That petition was brought by somebody else. That petition, as it came to us, didn't work. And in fact, if you did it again and made a real strong statement about employees and all that stuff, it'd still be unenforceable.
Well, we won't know that.
It would still be unenforceable. It's got a strong statement. We've had that in place. All I'm telling you is what we've got. If you wanted something different than what wasn't working, you needed to write it differently. It needed to be written in a different way, and probably should have included the judge and a bunch of other people in a group looking for a way to describe an enforceable employee ban. What would she accept? How would we put that together? That's all I'm saying is part of this stuff is talking to each other. Some people's political tactic, I mentioned it the other day, some people's political tactic in this town is to polarize us, and that's just a tactic. That's not a way of solving problems, that's just a tactic. And that just gets us all worked up on different sides, not finding solutions. I don't operate that way. I'm a different kind of person. I just don't look at the world that way. And I always think it's silly when that happens. And I'm always sorry with the outcomes.